What does it take to be happy in tech? Welcome to Programmable, where we talk to tech luminaries to help you with your career. Programmable is brought to you by JDoodle, the AI coding suite for learning and building together. You can try our easy-to-use online development environment and start coding in 88 programming languages in seconds. I'm Lucas Hakewill, and today we're speaking with RamG Vallath. He describes himself as the happiest person he knows. He studied a BTech at IIT Madras in the south of India, an incredibly difficult school to get into. He became Chief Operating Officer of Airtel at the young age of 34. RamG, welcome.
Thank you, Lucas. So nice to be here with you.
Wonderful to have you here. So your career was a rocket. Chief Operating Officer at Airtel at 34. Talk to us about your journey so far.
So I do want to clarify, when you say Chief Operating Officer of Airtel, Airtel has presence in multiple geographies within India and now globally. So the Chief Operating Officer was for a particular circle, for a particular operation. It was a big deal,
Yes.
because most of the people who came into that position were people who are managing directors, CEOs of large companies who had come in at that time in telecom. So yeah,
They had a few more grey hairs.
yeah, many more. Well, actually, not really. I had lots of grey hairs by that time. But you know, the story till that was also very interesting because I come from a very fairly humble background, and I was very lucky that, you know, on retrospect, when I look back, I think I was very lucky to have gone through some of those very different experiences compared to most people who were in my position. So I studied in a very rural location, a small town, a small village actually in the south of India, and the schooling was done in vernacular medium, in Malayalam, which is my mother tongue. So everything was taught to us in Malayalam, right? Whether it was physics, chemistry, biology. So I learned some very interesting terms. For example, something like a switch, which you put on and off. In Malayalam, it's called Vidyut Shakti Gamanagamana Niyantrakam. Okay. So,
Wow.
and you want to repeat that?
Incredible. I'm not going to attempt that.
So the thing is, everything was learned in Malayalam, including English was taught to us in Malayalam, you know?
Yes.
So I had never spoken a sentence in English before I got into IIT. But on retrospect, I think studying in a small village like that with nobody really focusing on getting into an engineering college, most people are just focused on graduating from 10th grade because the pass percentage was only about 20%. 80% used to fail in the 10th grade. And so I had really nobody to compare myself with. And I really thought that I had to crack every single problem I came across in physics, chemistry, mathematics to be able to get through to engineering. So I would really spend so much of time on doing that. And that's, I think, one of the reasons I got this phenomenally good rank, an All India rank of 129 in the joint entrance exam for IITs. You know, there was about 300,000 people who wrote the exam, and I was 129 in that. And the only reason I think was because I had nobody to compete against, and I thought I had to be perfect to get through. So got into IIT. IIT was awesome. I did have some hiccups there, but net, I sort of got out of technology for some time and got into a management course in another pretty good institute called XLRI, a Premier Management Institute. Managed to get from there, and then as you said, life took off like a rocket. The interesting thing was, and this is a very important message for all the listeners, the first job I got from campus was in a place called Titan. It's a fantastic company. It used to make watches only in those days. Now it has a whole lot of other things. It was by far the lowest paying company to come on campus and recruit people. But I was happy to get that because it was also a company where you could learn a hell of a lot. So and I stuck to that job for the next 5 years. And the gap between me and the next lowest salary in my batch would have kept widening. But it really didn't matter because I knew that I was learning a lot in Titan. And by the time I moved out to Titan, because of the knowledge I had acquired there, I managed to get a job at about 3 to 4x my salary. And within another 2 years, my salary had doubled again. So in 2 years, from the time I left Titan to when I became a country manager for 3Com India, my salary actually went up 10x. And that is such an important lesson, right? Because most of our techies today, they keep jumping jobs, just looking at that one line item, which is their salary. But that's not what you should focus on at the beginning of your career. It's how much value you can add to yourself. And so in a very short while, then at the age of 34, I became the youngest chief operating officer in India's telecom industry. So that's the story.
I'm so excited to dive more into this, RamG. I want to pick up on a few things that you mentioned, particularly about your early life. So you're studying in Malayalam, you're seeing that your peers have a 20% pass rate for their matriculation. How do you decide on engineering, and what gives you the motivation to strive for IIT?
Okay, so that was completely inspired by my father. He is an engineer in the truest sense. He was an electrical engineer, and he was working in the state electricity company, Kerala State Electricity Board. And the good thing was that he would every once in a while take us to his workplace. So I have seen these massive power stations. In the place where I was in Mulamattam, there was a massive underground power station which was 7 floors inside a cave, right?
Wow.
And he would explain painstakingly to us about the generator and how the alternating current was produced, and what is the difference between DC and AC, and at home he would be the one to do all tinkering on our car. So there was a time, for example, we had a very old dilapidated car, 20-year-old car, and the chassis of the car actually broke. And my dad he did all the calculation and said, a wooden reaper, if I tie it with a chain to the chassis, that would actually hold the chassis, the stress that is produced. And we did that. We went around in the car with a wooden reaper as part of the chassis. He would actually take out the engine himself, take it apart, get it rebored and put it back. And I was his able assistant, bringing the spanners and bringing his tea. And that really inspired me. And so he was an engineer. Everything he would do hands-on, and he would come up with cute solutions with difficult problems. And that actually inspired me to become an engineer. And that's all about technology, right? I mean, it's about finding great solutions to difficult problems.
And being resourceful with the resources that you have, if it's a reaper, if it's some steel, whatever it is. So your father really there was your inspiration to want to pursue engineering.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to IIT. You'd never spoken English before outside of English class. Tell me what that was like.
That was the most terrible experience, because I had never even stepped out of my state, Kerala, and I had spoken only in Malayalam my entire life. So coming to IIT was a culture shock, because suddenly I was exposed to 99% of my batchmates were from outside Kerala. Even a few Malayalis who were from outside the state would speak mostly in English. And I was sort of brought up in this very socialist, communist state of Kerala, where we had looked at anything Western, including the language, as something which is an imposition of culture. And so I mean, even though I used to read tons and tons of books in English, I had never had the chance to speak in English. And so I had this huge inferiority complex in front of my classmates. Most of the others were from metros and English medium schools, very fluent in English. And I had this huge inferiority complex. I wouldn't speak to anybody except one other classmate of mine who was from Kerala. So we would speak to each other in our native tongue. And finally, it was actually one of my seniors who sort of made fun of me, saying that you're an Indian Institute of Technology, not Kerala Institute of Technology. Might as well make some friends outside of Kerala. And that's what pushed me to learn English and try and speak to people. And I realized that after a few weeks, I am pretty decent in speaking in English, right? Because I had read so much. So my grasp of the language was phenomenal. It's just that I didn't have the confidence to speak. And that's why when I realized one very important life lesson is that you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone to grow. And unless you push yourself out of your comfort zone, you will never grow. That was an eye-opener. And I became very friendly with very large number of friends very fast because I took this trouble to push myself out of my comfort zone. Not easy. It was not at all easy, but it finally paid off big time.
This experience of being incredibly lonely, it sounds like, in those first few weeks or months of study, and then you make this decision, and wow, it's this incredible 2-week transformation.
Yeah, you said it. The first 1 month or so, I was feeling miserable, and a lot of my seniors, and there was a lot of what we call ragging in India, and I think it's called hazing in the US. They would actually just make fun of me, fun of my accent, fun of my inability to speak in the language. And I used to feel terribly inferior. And I was so lonely. And I would sometimes feel like running away from that entire place. And this act of taking the matters into my own hands and pushing myself out of my comfort zone, that really changed my life.
For somebody who's listening who might be in a similar situation, they're feeling lonely or they're feeling this inferiority complex or imposter syndrome, do you have any advice for them?
I think the most important thing to remember is that there are so many dimensions to a person. And there will be so many things that is phenomenally good about you. Yes, there may be some dimensions where you need to develop, or you are not maybe at par with the people that you see around you. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, you are unique, you are phenomenal. And I talk about something called strength stacking. Look at all the strengths and abilities that you have, or the knowledge and abilities that you have. And if you stack them up, it will come to a very unique position where you are the number one in the world. And you should always remember that. That's one. Number two is, then systematically go about building the capability and continuously push the boundary of comfort. These two things will ensure that you are pretty much confident within a very short while.
Strength stacking. I love this. So this idea of RamG's come to IIT and you might be feeling really bad about your ability to communicate with your classmates, but actually maybe your engineering prowess might be much better than some of your classmates because of all of your practical hands-on experience. And if you stack those along all of the great skills that you have, you've got something to be proud of.
Absolutely. And the fact that I studied in a small village and among people who are highly impoverished, right? My classmates were in my high school. The average daily salary of the household, income of a household, would have been about less than $1.
Yes.
When you study with people like that, you get an understanding of the country, of your society, which nothing else can give you. And you become empathetic, you develop so many skills, which are all very important in life. And of course, the fact that my dad had helped me with so much of solution orientation, which is finally what engineering is about, right?
solve a problem. So RamG, you've had this great time at IIT. Eventually, everything's going really well in your career, and something happened that changed everything for you. Can you walk us back to this moment?
So, when I became the youngest chief operating officer in the telecom industry, I was a very, very driven person. I was highly ambitious. And I had set my goals really high. So I wanted to become a global CEO of a Fortune 500 company by the age of 45. That was my ambition. To make as much money as possible as early as possible in life. Very clear, straightforward ambition. And I thought it was a cakewalk, right? 24 is when I started working. 34, I had reached this very, very admirable level in my career. Another 11 years to go. I thought I would comfortably be able to do that. But it's at that point in time that I started noticing some kind of a discomfort, physical discomfort. And it started with a slight tremor in my fingers. Every time I tried to pick up a pen or a spoon or a fork, my hand would tremble. And every time I tried to climb up or down steps, I would feel as if I was about to fall. There's some lack of balance, something about my body which is not letting me balance properly. And I had no idea what is the problem. I met a couple of doctors. The doctors couldn't identify the problem. And the problem just kept continuing and getting worse. And I switched jobs thinking it's the stress of the work which is making it happen. I switched multiple jobs actually. And at the age of 41, I was that time director of operations for HP India, Hewlett Packard India. And then I had a viral fever. It was a fever which was going around. I caught it, and then within 3 days, my body had become completely paralyzed. So I was unable to move my hands or my legs even 1 centimeter. I couldn't keep my eyelids open because I had no control over my eyelids. They would keep drooping. And I couldn't speak because my voice was going. So I was, for all practical purposes, paralyzed. And then I was wheeled into the hospital, and the doctor managed to figure out what is wrong with me. It was actually an autoimmune condition. An autoimmune condition is where your own immune system, which is supposed to protect you from germs which come from outside, turns against you and start destroying your own body. So these traitors in my body were completely destroying the nerves of my hands and legs. And it's called a peripheral neuropathy, where the extremities, nerves in the extremities, both hands and legs, were under constant attack from my immune system. The effect was that there was no brain impulses going to the muscles which were on my hands and legs. And that in turn meant that the muscles had wasted away. Because if you don't use the muscle for a long enough period of time, the muscles completely waste away, and then it's irrecoverable. It doesn't come back. And that's what had happened to me. So the good thing was that the doctor then identified what is the problem. The first right diagnosis in about 7 years. And they put me on a medication. This medication was called IVIG, intravenous immunoglobulin. I had to take about 36 bottles of this over the next 5 days. So bottle after bottle after bottle kept getting pumped into my body. And at the end of those 5 days, I started feeling a lot better. And over the next 1 week, my body completely recovered. It was like, I don't know. I mean, do you have, in Australia, do you have this comics called Asterix and Obelix?
I'm familiar with them, yes.
You're familiar with that. So there's something called magic potion which people drink, and it just transforms your body, and you become extremely strong. So for me, this was like a magic potion going into my body. Suddenly, all the problems vanished. I could actually spread out my fingers, which I couldn't do earlier. I could stand without falling. I could close my eyes without losing balance. And then I started intense amount of physiotherapy to build back my muscles. And within about 2 weeks, I was able to run up 9 floors to my office. Whereas before that, I could barely take 2 or 3 steps up. It was so bad, right? And this completely changed my life. And then I could spend time with my children. I could play football with them. And I could cook pizzas for them. And I thought, wow, now my life has come back and I can go back to aspiring to become the global CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Well, unfortunately, that's when the problem came, because in about 45 days' time, the condition came back worse than what it was. And I was again wheeled to the hospital. And then that's when the doctor really told me that this IVIG is not a permanent solution. It staves off the condition for a short period of time. And in my case, it was just about 45 days. So I had to keep taking that. The problem was that it was ridiculously expensive. So that, I think it cost about $15,000 in that day to have that one round of IVIG for 5 days.
Yes.
And it was out of pocket because it was not being covered at that point in time for insurance. So, and to take that every 45 days, well, I was not earning that kind of money. So, right. So I had to have an alternate, which is steroids. Now, steroids, what it does is it suppresses your immune system. And that in turn ensures that your immune system does not attack your body. But then your immune system doesn't attack pretty much anything. So you are open to all kinds of infections, and steroids make you put on huge amount of weight. And I put on about 16 kilos in the next 6 months. And it was like bloated up like a balloon. I could barely walk in spite of all that. And I would keep tripping and falling. The worst was my fingers had lost their strength, right? And the sensitivity. So, and I was director of operations for Hewlett Packard at that time, as I said. And I had to travel across the country and sometimes to Singapore and US. And the jet lag would make my condition so bad, my hand would be continuously shaking. And sometimes I had to get up at 5 a.m. to attend a meeting at 8 o'clock because it would take me 90 minutes to put on the 6 buttons of my shirt. Putting on a button is an extremely complex process. So you have to hold the button with 2 fingers, hold the buttonhole on the other side, match the position, push it through with your thumb, pull it through with your other 2 fingers. Each of this was an incredibly difficult task for me because I couldn't hold the button in my hand. I couldn't hold the other side. And both hands would be shaking so much I wouldn't be able to push them, keep them next to each other. And I wouldn't be able to push it with my thumb, which is completely useless. And then every 2 minutes I had to drop my hand because my biceps didn't have the strength to hold up my hand. So there are times when I had to lie down on the bed to put on the buttons of my shirt. So life was really, really tough. But, I did tell myself that this is not the end of it. And I kept myself afloat and managed to navigate that incredibly difficult situation.
Tell me about the emotions you were feeling in that, I suppose, in that moment. After the 45 days, it starts to come back worse. What did that feel like, RamG?
Have you ever felt a ton of bricks falling on you?
No.
It is
no reference.
Neither have I, but I think it is pretty much like that, right? It was like you had so much of hope. And then it was like the rug was being pulled off from under your feet instantly, right? And you just fall on your face again. And then there's despair, there's complete disappointment. And then you have to pick yourself up again, literally and figuratively, because I would keep falling again. And then I had to pick myself up. I would sprain some part of my body, couple of fractures, and you have to go with that. And you have to still plod on. You have to battle it out because you have 2 kids who are young and who need to be put through their school and then college. They're depending on you. I was very lucky that I have a wife who's incredibly supportive, and she just took on the load uh, of both running the household, earning the salary. I mean, I was also earning, but she was also working in a multinational corporation. She was working for Google, and that made it a lot easier for me. But this crushing disappointment was what I felt. And it is very important for me that I don't let the emotions rule over me. Uh, two, three things. One is that I knew that I was the only one who could fix myself. Of course, there are doctors, but I had to take ownership. I had to figure out the right treatment. I had to chase the doctors. I had to find alternate treatments. That's on one side. On the other side, as I said, I had two young, impressionable children. And I wanted them to know that life is going to be tough. But if you have the ability to keep smiling and to look at solutions, you can make a great life out of whatever situation. And that's what I did, right? I mean, so what I did two, three things. Number one is that I took on additional responsibilities at work. So director operations was an incredibly tough job by itself, but I said, bring it on. So I took on the responsibility for running projects, which was a huge, complex set of tasks to do and things to achieve. And then I took on the responsibility for the entire quality functions for the organization. So I was director of operations, director Six Sigma, director projects. Because I thought the more I am occupied mentally, the less I would think about why did this happen to me. I knew the worst thing to do was to sit back and say, oh God, why did this happen to me? Or feel that life is being unfair on me. The moment I give in to those emotions, it would be a downward spiral, and you will not be able to stop yourself. Right? So this is the way I kept myself positive. The second thing I did was I used a big strength of mine, which is sense of humor. So I have the ability to make people laugh, mostly at my own expense. I would crack some stupid joke, and I told myself that any room I walk into, the room has to feel a little more positive because I'm there. The happiness quotient of the room should increase because of my presence. And I would do that. I would make a very specific attempt to bring up something funny, something absurd, make people laugh. And suddenly the mood in the room would be far more chilled out. It will be far more relaxed. And that would reflect back on me. I would feel better. I would feel more positive. In turn, it will reflect back on the team. And that's how, you make a virtuous cycle happen. At home, I had the ability to bring my kids together. Every evening, I would spend a couple of hours with the kids. And I would tell them completely wacky, funny stories. And I could make up stories, I could, without any idea which is the next sentence, I could start a sentence and connect it to another absurd sentence, and make a fantastic story which is completely absurd. And obviously you can imagine. You can imagine how kids would react to that, right? They would be like rolling around laughing. And I was feeling on top of the world. So here I was unable to walk properly on a crutch, but I was having a ball of a time. I was having a fantastic time. So yeah, these are the few ways I managed to keep myself afloat. Every once in a while I would trip and fall. That time, yes, the crushing despair would come in for a short while, and I would keep myself bring myself back to normal and then positivity by thinking of all the good things I have. The great job I have, my wonderful children, my wife who's like a rock solid support, all that kept me going.
It's almost an analog here that I see between what you described with the idea of the strength stacking, and you're almost stacking together. Okay, on one side, I feel physically awful, and this is hugely, it's adversarial. It's difficult. But on the other hand, I've got this wonderful wife. I've got these incredible kids. I can make my kids laugh with these silly stories. There's all of these positives on the other side. So you're kind of trying to balance out the positive with the negative.
And Lucas, it's a choice. Honestly, and I know it's a cliche. People say it all the time. But I've gone through it and I know it's a choice, right? And of course, it is different for different people. For some people, it's more difficult. For some people, it's easier. It depends on your genetics. It depends on your upbringing, what you've observed as a child. But for anybody, at the end of the day, there is a way to make yourself feel more positive and focus on the good things in life. Different difficulty level for different people, but the formula is the same. It is to focus on the positive. Yeah.
How did you know in a given moment whether you were pushing yourself too hard and that you were causing yourself physical damage versus just knowing that I need to get up and I need to go to that QA meeting or that Six Sigma meeting because these responsibilities are so important to me?
I know that's a very insightful question because it just brought up this thinking in me, and I had never thought of it that way, balancing it out. And yes, I did push myself sometimes a little too hard. One of the things I told myself is that I need to keep walking. And the moment I give in, then there is no going back. So I cannot lose this fight. So every day evening, I would actually go for a walk with my wife, right? And she would be there because she was petrified that I would trip and fall. Well, I was petrified that I would trip and fall. But I knew that unless I pushed myself and did it, tomorrow I would not get up. So I had to do it. I had to keep doing it. I refused to hold a stick, even though I needed a crutch. Some of the time I did because of sprains and fractures, etc. But otherwise I would give it up and I would still try and walk. So it was a difficult balancing act in every sense of the word. Difficult balancing is right. But my son asked me this, he asked me, and he calls me in Malayalam, Achan is the word for father. And my kids call me Acham, which is a little bit of a, their own innovation on the word. So he said, Acham, why do you do this? You really push yourself so hard. And I told him this, a supernova burns very bright and it's very short-lived. But for the time that it is shining, it is the brightest thing in the universe. And what I want to be is I want to be the shining example of positivity to people around me. It might mean that I might be able to shine only for a shorter period of time than compared to a lot of others. But for that period, I will make a big difference in the world.
That's pretty incredible, RamG.
And I can tell you that he was quite impressed.
That is a very good answer. Wow. RamG, you obviously have and had incredible technical skills being an IT and but that it seems like that's not all of the skills that you've required to be successful. What do you believe are some of the qualities that have helped you along the way?
So, I love that you brought up that particular question because I'm co-founder of a tech startup. For the last 10 years, I've been, again, back with a lot of engineers doing hardcore tech work, and it's exciting to see that. But the one thing I observe in a lot of these people is that they think tech is the end all of everything, and it is the only thing that matters. And they focus on their technical skills and they're very proud of it. Sometimes they're arrogant about it. Many of my classmates from IIT, they're incredible technical people, right? But when I observe what actually helps people succeed in life and convert that tech skill into something really life-changing or world-changing, I realized that that's only about 25 to 30% of the skills that is important, right? 75 to 70% is other skills. And it's about what I call power skills. It used to be called soft skills earlier. And that's actually, not really giving it the credit. They're called power skills. Power skills are the skills which actually enable you to use the technical skills that you have or the expertise, subject matter expertise that you have, and multiply it 1,000-fold. Right? You can be fantastic at tech, but if you are not able to convince others about or work with others, you will never be able to be a success. And there is no job in the world which is an absolute standalone job. You are doing something to enable somebody else, and somebody else is enabling something to make your work better. There are 100,000 people who are important for somebody's work to be successful, including customers and vendors and colleagues and bosses and your family and friends and everything, right? You have to get all that right. And then these power skills become very important. So I put down these power skills and let me just tell you one by one, right? I think the first and foremost thing that comes to my mind is resilience. No life is going to be without ups and downs. So I say, instead of life is full of ups and downs, I say life is full of ups and even more ups. And why do I say that? Resilience is the ability to accept a setback when it happens. And I say when it happens, not if it happens, because in everybody's life, setbacks will happen. It's the ability to accept that setback as quickly as possible and then start looking for solutions. And then finally to convert the setback into something positive. Right? These are the different stages. The first thing that happens to you when you have a setback is that you're disbelieving, then you're angry or frustrated or disappointed or all the bunch of negative emotions.
Yes.
Then there is a grudging acceptance. Oh God, this has happened. Till then you're actually trying to reject it, right? But then you start accepting it. And then you start embracing it. And then the final stage, which not too many people get to, is to convert that into something incredibly positive. And that setback becomes your badge of honor in your life. And for me, that is what I have tried to do, right? Every fall I've had, the last 10 years, I must have fallen about 50 times. I've had about 10 fractures. And even today, I find a lot of normal tasks very difficult to do. But today, that's a badge of honor for me. Every time I go and deliver a keynote address, talk to people, and I've done about 200 of those keynote addresses, it has become my biggest strength because people want to listen to that story, right? So that is resilience. Extraordinarily important. Second thing is what I call purposefulness. So you should always have a goal in mind, a life goal, brought down to a 5-year goal, brought down to a 1-year goal, brought down to a monthly goal, to a daily goal. So every day when you wake up in the morning, there should be that overarching goal that drives your life. So for me, how it transformed my life was that in the initial stages of my career, I wanted to, as I said, become global CEO of a Fortune 500 company, as rich as possible. And then I was taking every step towards that. And that really helped me drive my career upwards. But then unexpected things happen, right? Things which are completely out of my control. So I had to change my strategy. I had to change my goal. My goal today is to touch 1 million lives positively. And every day morning, I get up all charged up to go after that. And I break it down to what I want to achieve by the end of the year, then what I want to do today to reach a little closer to that. I have a checklist. I can go after, tick on the checklist, making sure at the end of the day that I have achieved each of those things. So sense of purpose is very important. The third thing, which is equally important, is end-to-end ownership. So I was going through my treatments, the IVIG, which I couldn't afford, then steroids. There was absolutely no curing my condition. I was going from bad to worse. And I kept looking for solutions. My doctors, who were limited in their knowledge, they were not able to give me a full solution. And I knew that I had to take ownership for my life. So I kept looking for solutions. I went through traditional medications. I went through alternate therapies. And finally, I found a treatment in the US, which is a clinical trial, an experimental treatment. And I went for that, and I spent my entire life saving on that. It was a big risk to take, but it changed my life. It was like rebooting my body, So they actually killed my entire immune system using chemo and some other toxic medications, and then restart the entire immune system. And by the end of a month, 3 months, which I was there, I was feeling a lot better. And then I came back to India and I drew up this Excel sheet with 180 days, each date I put for the next 180 days, and 27 exercises for each day. For each exercise, I put a number. The number of repetitions I will do that particular exercise, and the weight with which I would do it. And every week, the target would become tougher and tougher and tougher. And then I went about beating each and every one of those targets, each and every one of those days. And that gave me so much of, this incredible amount of dopamine flooding into my brain that I was feeling positive. And that's when I wrote my first book, which is a completely wacky science fiction for children. And so this ownership made me convert this setback into something positive. I became an author. Then I became a motivational speaker. Today I have delivered over 200 keynote addresses to global audiences, to young children in India. And I feel amazing, right? End-to-end ownership is one. Then the other one is what I call growth mindset, which is essential for every human being, right? You can have two kinds of mindsets. One is the belief that you're born with a certain amount of ability and that will not change. And the other one is the belief, and that's called a fixed mindset. Huh? And the other one is the belief that you can grow any ability if you focus on it, apply the right amount of strategy, right kind of strategy, and practice enough. Now, that is called growth mindset. People with growth mindset typically take on challenging tasks without being scared of failing, because they know that they are not pitting their ability against it, but it's only pitting their current level of preparation against a difficult task. The ones with fixed mindset are scared of taking on challenges because if they fail, they would look like losers. Their ability is under question. So the behavior of people with growth mindset is very different. So they will continuously learn, try out new things, try out uncharted path, and then keep learning to make it a success. And that's something that's really helped me, because I have hit out at so many different directions which I never thought I would do. I became an author, motivation speaker. Now I'm a parenting coach, because I spent 4 years learning parenting. Because I realized that, if I want to make a dent in the world, I want to make a universe a better place, then I need to impact the life of young children. And to do that, by giving a 1-hour talk is not going to be enough. I want to help people who are with them through their life, which is their parents. And so I've written a parenting book after spending 4 years researching on parenting and child psychology, including a diploma in child psychology. And I wrote that book, and that became a bestseller from day one. Today in India, it is a higher selling parenting book. It's called Active Parenting. Right? So it's growth mindset which drives me. So all these, right? Resilience, sense of purpose, end-to-end ownership, growth mindset. And to top it all is the most important one, which is smile. You try and smile at what's happening around you. Smile at people. Make it a positive life. Be cheerful with people around you. Look at things in a humorous fashion. Be authentic, so that you don't have to be completely have a put up front, which constantly makes you feel ill at ease. Don't do that. Be what you are, embrace what you are, and that'll help you.
Wow,
Wow,
RamG.
I spoke a lot.
That's what. That's so good. Okay, where to start? Resilience, purpose, end-to-end ownership,
Growth
growth
mindset.
mindset, and you have to smile as well. How do you think, talking to our audience of young technical people, how do you think they can start to apply these to their day-to-day life?
So I think the most important one in this is to know that you're part of the larger group, and the purpose that you are there for is to add value to others. And that is the way you will succeed, right? So as a techie, it's important to know that you're part of a larger team and to understand why you're doing what you're doing. The final purpose of the code that you're creating, or the program that you're writing, or the product that you're creating, right? And the people who will benefit from it, the people who are contributing to it, which are your team members and maybe some other function, some other teams which work along with you, and be respectful of them, and then try and help those around you as much as possible. And that is how you will achieve the larger purpose. And also then, don't give up if something doesn't happen, which is either downstream or upstream, which sets you back. Try and help people downstream or upstream in making things happen if you can. Otherwise, don't get disappointed. Look for other ways of doing things. Look for alternate strategies. Try out new things constantly. Be willing to learn. And I think that applies to a tech job more than anything else in the world today, right? Your technology is changing so fast that you cannot be a dinosaur. You have to keep reinventing. You need to keep investing in yourself. And that's growth mindset, right? And at the end of the day, be a cheerful person around you. I mean, so make sure that people around you feel happy that you're there. I can tell you that is 30% of the battle won. Because people want to hang around with people who are positive. People want to support those who are cheerful. And you will get a lot of support in your work when you're a cheerful person. And I can give you some examples, right? In this tech company which I was in, I co-founded, we had some incredibly good talent. There were some people who are very good technically, but who are absolutely bad at interacting with others. And nobody wanted to work with them. So as a result, at the end of the day, those guys were very ineffective compared to moderately good tech people who were able to ask for help, who had no problem, no qualms about admitting that they didn't know something and hence learned something and then came back and applied it, who had the ability to take risks. They are the people who actually did well. And it's so important then to have these power skills. One of the important things I say in a professional setup is to be responsive, which is the most important way of showing respect to the other person. So if somebody's asked you something, be responsive. So if you have committed a time frame for doing something, ensure that you achieve that. Move mountains, to make that happen. Otherwise, keep the other person informed that it's not going to happen because of whatever reason. Ask for help for making things happen. So take ownership. Each of these are so important for techies to succeed in their work. And they don't realize that, right? And they think being experts in the subject is all that matters. It's not.
But actually, as you described power skills as a multiplier, they will multiply even, as you said, maybe a moderate tech talent to, in the end, be more effective than someone who's very technical but unable to interact with the people around them.
Exactly.
Is there something that you believe really strongly that most people disagree with you on?
Yeah, there is actually. So, I have this fatal flaw, as some people say, which I believe is a great strength. I trust people implicitly, and I trust people unconditionally. That's my first reaction to anybody. And people think I'm naive, and there are enough well-wishers who tell me you should be more suspicious of people. Until they are proven to be trustworthy, don't trust them. For me, the belief is that I should just trust people. And then if they prove themselves to be untrustworthy, then I have that in my mind, but I still try and trust them and give them opportunities to prove their trust. I was a director in Dell, and there were about 10, 12 of us directors who went for a workshop and a training. And there was a there was a questionnaire which is administered to us to figure out how much we stood on trust. So it is a scale of 1 to 14. Somebody with a score of 1 would be incredibly cynical and untrusting. Somebody with a score of 14 would be a completely trusting person. And as you can expect, most of my colleagues were around 6 to 8. I was 13.
Rich, I suppose.
I was 13. And I would trust people. And today, at the ripe age of 55, I can sit back and say, it has only helped me being trusting. Because when you are trusting, most of the time people want to live up to your trust. And that's what at least personal experience has taught me. It doesn't mean that you be an idiot, right? I mean, you have your radar up, you figure out if somebody is untrustful or not, untrustworthy or not, and then it's okay. You keep that in your mind and then you behave accordingly, but still try and give them the opportunity to redeem themselves. That way, I think you will feel happier in life, knowing that you're surrounded with people you can trust, rather than being always suspicious of people around you.
I like this one. So you were a 13 and this has worked out well for you.
Thank God I was not 14.
RamG, you've delivered over 200 keynotes. You've written 3 books. You've told this wonderful story to us. Tell us a bit about your books and how our listeners can stay in touch with what you're doing.
I think the thing that people can actually do to stay in touch with me is connect with me or follow me on LinkedIn. I post regularly 3 times a week on LinkedIn. And everything I post is full of positive messages. And I believe that's what actually will make a difference in the world, right? My books are the first book, which is a completely wacky science fiction for children. Well, it's not really for children because there is humor for all age groups, but it got positioned as a children's book. It's called Oops, the Mighty Gurgle. It's about a time-traveling pumpkin, which has traveled back in time from millions of years in the future, called Oops, and how it saves humanity from destruction. It's an extremely wacky, funny book, and anybody, I say it's for a narrow age band of 9 to 99, anybody who reads it will find it funny. The second book is From Ouch to Oops. It's my own life story. And I have dedicated it to all the protons in the universe who stay positive in spite of all the negativity whizzing around them. And I know engineers would love this, right? So that's the second book, which is a life story, which is a humorously written story of my life. The third one is Active Parenting, which is my parenting book. But yeah, so I make it a point to push people to try and read these books. I'm a sales guy, so I have no shame in keep pushing people to read it. So all of you listeners, please go ahead and order it now on Amazon. It's available, right?
Wonderful.
But do follow me on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. We'll include in the show notes your LinkedIn as well as links to your books. RamG, do you have any final thoughts for our listeners or any advice that I maybe didn't quite get to tease out?
So I think the first thing is, so you listen to my story. You listen to different parts of my story, from the ups to the downs to the ups. it's important that you try and reflect on what you heard. It's important that you spend time internalizing what I said and connecting it to your own life. Because as I said, every individual is unique and very different. Do your own strength stacking and figure out what is your strength. What is unique about you, in which unique combination about you, which makes you number one in the universe as far as that set of strengths are concerned. Focus on it, build on it, understand what makes you tick, what sets you back, and work on it. And try to apply some of the knowledge that I have shared. That's the number one. Number two, which is a very important thing, is that each of us, we are made up of about 36 trillion cells. We're all working together in this incredible dance of harmony to give us something called life. And this life is a phenomenal gift. And we need to embrace life and not just be a traveler in life, but make our own path and make sure that we maximize every minute of our life. And that's my advice to all of you. Thanks.
Yours is an incredible story, RamG, and I've learned so much from talking to you. This will resonate so much with our technical audience. So I'm so grateful for you sharing your time and your stories so honestly and vulnerably. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you for having me. And I hope people enjoy the story and stay connected with me. Thanks.
Absolutely. You've been listening to the Programmable Podcast, a podcast brought to you by JDoodle. You can jump online and code instantly in 88 languages in the cloud. Check out JDoodle and check out the rest of the Programmable Podcast episodes wherever you get your podcasts, or on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify. Thanks for listening.